And welcome back into another episode of the Believe in Georgia Tech podcast. We are your co-hosts. That is RJ Schafer. I'm Jackson Caudell, coming to you after a week off. Get into more of that in a little bit. But yeah, we wanted to come to you here on the bye week, give our thoughts and everything, talk everything out. But first off, RJ, how you doing, man?
Feeling great. Went through a pretty hectic weekend. Saw Georgia Tech win though, so that's all that matters. Co-host Jackson was busy with something super important that he'll tell you guys about in a second. But we're back in the Believe in Georgia Tech pod. We didn't forget about you guys. Heading into the bye week, we're giving you another episode. So apologies for the absence, but there's good reason behind it.
Yeah. So I've had a lot of people ask us, well, where's the episode? Like, y'all just going to not do anything for Wake Forest? So I did get married last weekend. It's an awesome moment. But y'all would be very proud of me. I'm sitting there. So the ceremony didn't start till 4. And I made sure I watched as much of that game as I could. RJ was there. It was funny. So we got to, I think it was the controversial offsides thing. And then it was like, hey, man, we got to get going. Like, it's time to go. So I didn't see overtime. I didn't see anything. It's funny. We got done with the ceremony. Somebody pulled me aside and just whispered in my ear, hey, Tech did it. Okay, that's all I needed to know. I went back and I've watched the game like 3 times. We do have thoughts on it. We weren't going to just, hey, we're back. Let's just not talk about that Wake Forest game. Although I do know that that's probably the mindset of the fan base at this point, that just like let's just forget the Wake Forest game ever happened. But we've lots to talk about there. But yeah, that's why we didn't do anything last week. It was just a super busy week. Obviously, I wasn't at the game Saturday. It's the only game I'm going to miss all year. It just was what it was. So that's just why we didn't have any shows this week for the people that were asking. But we're back doing a bye week show. Obviously, we'll have a full week next week talking Virginia Tech. We're going to start doing some Monday shows where we just kind of talk a little bit more about the ACC at whole. We're going to kind of do a little bit of that here. Just kind of, it's still very early. Like, it's, for example, like Georgia Tech's played 2 conference games. Miami plays Florida State this weekend. Like, that's their first conference game. Like, we still have a lot we have to figure out, but just kind of a little bit of a lay of the land here as conference play really gets cranking up this weekend in the weeks to come. But for those, before we get into anything, would love it if you're watching this. If you haven't subscribed, would love it if you would do that for us. Community keeps growing. We've soared past 1,000 subscribers. Let's aim for 2,000 now. Just keep growing this thing. Just building a great community of Georgia Tech fans, people that love Georgia Tech anything. Like we talk, I mean, it's mainly football here, but we try to talk about as much as we can. Follow us wherever you get your podcast. Leave a like, leave a review on that. And then just keep growing this thing. So yeah, we have to we won't spend the whole show on it because I think a lot of people have mentally moved on. So I'm not going to sit here and harp on it. We do have to talk about the Wake Forest game. I'm not going to talk about officiating to start. We're going to get into that in a little bit. Like there were some. Look, I'm with you guys. I will just say off the top, just to get it out there, like the missed fumble on that was atrocious, and I know it's not the one being talked about, and I'm here with you guys on that. Like I do think it should be pointed out a lot more. That was awful, and capital A awful. I will level with everybody. The offsides call was bad too. I'll say the non call. I think there were several missed calls in this game. I think some of them went both ways. I think the offsides, it should have been called. Like, I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat anything about it like that. That should have been called. It was a total miss on the official's part. But the fumble was just as bad, and there were some other things in there. Like, it was just a poorly officiated game that frankly, the ACC should be embarrassed about just as around. But, like, do you have any, like, I just want to get the officiating stuff off the top now. Do you have anything you wanted to say off that so we can just kind of discuss the football?
I just want to go straight into football. Y'all don't want to hear my thoughts on the officiating.
I just wanted to let my opinions out there. I'm sure some of y'all may disagree with me, and that's totally fine. Let me know. But I did have some thoughts on that because it was unfortunately the main talking point of the game. I think it was such a loaded Saturday. I think all anybody wanted to say about that was, well, they should have called that offsides. When I think that there's a lot more nuance. I think there were some other missed calls as well. But I do have to be completely honest. That there was a terrible missed call that against Georgia Tech that it wasn't called. So, all right, let's talk about the football part of this. And I think that the first thing I want to go is I think Georgia Tech was outplayed in this game. Not just from a stats perspective. Look, they got down early in this game. Obviously, they only had the field goal in the first half. You had a couple of turnover on downs, especially you had the fake punt. Wake Forest ends up. They started out the first couple drives were a little slow. Like I thought the defense came out and played pretty well. I mean, so after Georgia Tech punts the ball back to Wake Forest, Wake goes 3 and out, then 9 plays, 28 yards. Punt, 3 plays, -1 yards punt. But then something we haven't seen a ton this year, you saw 4 consecutive drives that leaked into the second half. You had 6 plays, 66 yards. You had 4 plays, 69 yards, touchdown, 9 plays, 83 yards, field goal. And then the first drive of the second half, you had 12 plays, 68 yards. That was also a field goal, where it was like the defense just couldn't find any answers. Like I'll give Robbie Ashford a lot of credit. He played, I think, pretty well in that game. But then the defense, outside of, one drive, they kind of boxed them in a little bit. You had 3 plays, -3 yards, 4 plays, -3 yards, 9 plays, 65 yards where he had the missed field goal, 6 plays, only 11 yards. They got the field goal because of the fumble. You had 6 plays, 25 yards and a punt, ended the half. And then obviously Wake scored on the touchdown in overtime, didn't get the extra point. That was that. I'll say the offense just took forever to get going. Like that was once they got going, I felt like they really found their groove. But I thought the passing attack especially, and it was outside of Haynes King, like we've seen it at some times this year, especially in like the Clemson game. Outside of Haynes King, like they just could not find anything in the running game.
Yeah, and I think we see it week after week. Wake Forest for this first half, offense and defense. I mean, it felt like Wake Forest was actually dominating Georgia Tech. I mean, to the point to where, again, like we talked about how Georgia Tech has had a few slow starts this year, and we didn't feel a sense of worry. Like you knew what the game was going to be against Gardner-Webb. You felt like you knew what it was going to be against Temple. And Wake Forest was the first time where Georgia Tech was down heavy, and yeah, I thought for the first time this season, I'm like, this this is a big deficit that I don't know
Yeah.
If Georgia Tech can overcome. But I think outside of Haynes, like if King did not play in this game, I don't know how pretty the result had been. Let me put it like that.
Yeah. I mean, they were down 17-3 at the half. It got to 20-3, obviously, when Wake Forest went down on that first drive. And then Georgia Tech really kind of leveled it out. But again, Haynes King, 28-42, 243 yards, touchdown, no picks, 106 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. Like I said, outside of him, there just wasn't a lot there. I mean, Jamal Haynes he's just kind of invisible in this game, to be honest. 10 carries, 21 yards, caught 5 passes for only 14 yards. They weren't able to get anything super explosive outside of the Isaiah Canyon 37-yard catch. I mean, I'll say it was a good, yeah, it was a good. This was kind of the game we were looking for from Eric Rivers. Wouldn't you agree?
Mm-hmm. Just getting him involved, honestly.
Yeah, but as far as like the defense goes, look, it started out bad. They had some problems with Robbie Ashford. Robbie Ashford got knocked out for a little bit. Purdy comes in. I mean, Ashford for the day, 14 of 29, 222 yards. Damon Claiborne, who we talked about even before. I know we didn't do a preview show, but we've talked about him before. Like, I don't think Wake's a very good team, but he is a tremendous player. 21 carries, 119 yards. Ashford had 10 carries for 82 yards. Look, they outgained Georgia Tech 446-411. For y'all that follow the SP Plus metric that Bill Conley uses, like Georgia Tech had one of the lowest post-game win expectancies of the week. Like it was 21.3%. It was in the low 20s. And that basically it lucked out. Like Georgia Tech kind of lucked out is the sum of what that stat is telling you. look, a win is a win. You're not going to take it back or anything, but Wake Forest average yards per play 6.2, Georgia Tech 4.8, average yards per completion 15.7, Georgia Tech 8.6. Now, look, I thought they adjusted well in the second half. They got things going, and again, at the end of the day, they won. Like that's the main takeaway from the entire game. But I think it kind of goes with the narrative, with what we've seen from them this year, is that they cannot put a complete game together, like at all. Like, and it's fine a few games, like if you just hey, you're trying to put everything together and some things just don't click. Like I do not expect this team to go dominate everybody 40-0. Like I know we said, like, and they do play a favorable schedule, but like there have been, the only time I can think of in my head in the Brink Key area where they have gone on the road and like just dominated an ACC opponent was Virginia in 2023. And that Virginia team in 2023 was beyond awful. And I think they won like 45-17. I'm not excusing like the bad play or anything. It's just the way Georgia Tech plays generally. They haven't blown a lot of people out. And I know they have a favorable schedule, but I don't know. Like I don't expect them to go out and just win 45-0, just every time. And again, I'm not excusing the poor player or anything. I guess it's just trying to, I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm just trying to, not take everything just completely out of proportion based off one result against Wake Forest, even though like it was a poor game. Like they did not play well Saturday for the most part. Like it was one of the, I won't say that it definitely wasn't the worst I've seen them play in the Brink Key era, but like that was one of the worst games I've seen them play in quite a while. I do think it says something a little bit about them that they won, but like they did not play well Saturday. Like I don't think there's another way to say it.
Yeah, in something you touched on, I'm at least happy that Georgia Tech is 5-0 in the one game that we're looking at as a setback game or a super misunderperforming game is still a win. And I think that is still huge. But I also want to big picture it for a second and say this Wake Forest team probably is not that good. You're going to face, very similar skill level teams. You're going to face better teams down the stretch in the ACC. And you're not always going to get the same opportunities that you had in this game. Like, obviously, you had the Wake Forest missed field goal, which proved to be absolutely huge for Georgia Tech, sending this game into overtime, winning the game. Um, you can't turn the ball over on downs two drives in a row. I just feel like you fell into a lot of good things in this game that allowed you to win. But like you talked about with SP Plus, like there's a lot of universes where you do not win this game. There's a lot of very small things that could have not went your way in this game, and Wake Forest wins by 2 scores. I mean, that's a very real possibility. So something's got to move, something's got to budge, but a win is a win. I guess it is kind of the sentiment I'm at now.
Yeah, and I like one thing that also stood out to me was like for the second straight game, like the second quarter was just abysmal. I mean, Wake
Yeah,
Forest had 219 yards in the second quarter alone, while Georgia Tech had 74. Like I don't know what it is about the second quarter that just is just not clicking. But look, I think Brent Key said it best. I think the bye week came at a good time. We're going to kind of go into both sides of the ball and kind of like what we've liked so far, what we don't like, but just kind of putting a bow on the Wake Forest game. Look, they did play well. I don't think there is a Georgia Tech fan out there that will argue that they played well. But again, they found a way to win. Like that. That's the most important thing for them. They figured out a way to win. It's a gutsy. Like I think there were some things working against. Like Wake Forest had like 16 days off. Like the last time they played was on a Thursday night against NC State, and then they had a bye week, and then it's a noon kickoff on the road. Look, again, I'm not making excuses for them, but like there were some circumstances there. I think that Tech had to overcome it, and look, they did. They had a slow start. They figured some things out in the second half. We're fortunate enough to get away with the win, and at the end of the day, that's what matters. Like they're 5-0, they're 2-0 in the ACC. Had a bye week at the perfect time. And I guess let's kind of, before we get into big picture things, I guess let's kind of get into, look, 5 games is still like, we're technically not even half, like the bye week missed the halfway point of the season by 1 week. Like it'd be kind of nice to say, well, hey, evaluating this halfway through the season. Um, I guess let's start with the offense, and like the numbers for Georgia Tech's offense look pretty good. Like they're 18th in total offense, 44th passing efficiency, 31st scoring offense, ninth in sacks allowed, 22nd red zone offense, 16th rushing offense, 56th passing offense, 42nd third down offense. I think the thing for me is they've just lacked super explosiveness. I mean, when you look at like the yards per catch for the receivers, it doesn't blow you away. Isaiah Canyon, 15.8. Like he's kind of been of the starters and the guys that play a lot of snaps, he's kind of in a way been the most explosive. Like I don't think you can really argue with that. And that's not really what we envisioned in his role, but that's kind of what it's been. He's the leading receiver right now, 15 catches, 237 yards, 2 touchdowns. Eric Rivers, like you finally got a pretty good Eric Rivers game after he was been kind of quiet through the first 4. And like that's what I mean by the lack of explosiveness. Like he was brought in here to kind of be that guy. And we've seen, like it was, I know it was I think in the Clemson game, the Gardner Webb game, and in the Temple game, like they've tried to hook up with him on deep shots, and it just hasn't happened yet. So you haven't really gotten a ton of explosiveness from him. There's been a couple times where he's gotten carries on the jet sweeps and stuff and looked pretty good and gotten some gains, but I don't think it's just been there in the passing game. Not saying it can't be. It just hasn't been there yet. Malik Rutherford, 9.7 yards per catch, just been okay. Jamal Haynes mostly just catches, swing screens out of the backfield, and he's gotten upfield on him a couple times. Bailey Stockton's been pretty good, like 10 for 120, not like super great anything. But then like Dean Patterson and Jordan Allen got some big explosive gains in garbage time against 2 opponents that are not very good. So like that's like the one big issue to me is just the lack of an explosive passing game. And I think just the lack of it just total. Like we've talked about that before the season. Like, hey, that's got to be something that they figure out at some point this year, and they just haven't yet.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that's huge, especially if you're a team that starts slow on occasion, like we've seen that this year. You need to be able to find a way to punch back. You need to be able to find a way to get explosives and take away things from the defense. And we've kind of seen that at times. Like you said, I think Isaiah Canyon, he's been by far the most explosive player. He'll pretty much have a big catch every game, it feels like at this point. But Eric Rivers is not as involved as you think he would be. Uh, Malik is kind of just playing like a quiet slot role. You just haven't seen as much creativity or explosiveness in the pass game this year, even though the run game has been incredible for the most part. You've had a couple of duds from a couple of guys, but you just need to find a way to learn how to play from behind. Now I'm saying that after they just came back from a 17-point deficit, uh, but you won't always have the opportunity like you had in the Wake Forest game. You need to find a way to get big plays fast, and they've kind of struggled with that.
Yeah. And I think my other thing going into it is the running game has been good. Like the numbers pop off. I'll say Jamal Haynes and Malachi Hosley have not risen to the challenge in the 3 Power 4 games that they've played this year. Like we talked about Haynes King kind of, being the main focus and the stat guy right now in the rushing attack. Jamal Haynes, okay, in the 3 Power 4 games, or the 3 FBS opponents, the 3 big FBS opponents that they played. Colorado, 16 carries, 65 yards. Colorado, 12 carries, 26 yards. Wake, 10 carries, 21 yards. You got to get more out of him in those bigger situations. Like, when you're playing, Duke on the road, or when you're playing Syracuse at home, or, when you really need Jamal.
I think we lost Jackson there for a second, but just seeing Jamal Haynes get involved There you go. He's back.
I clicked the wrong button. Like this, what did I say on one of our podcast episodes? Like, I'm the most technologically challenged person under the age of 30, and it's true. Like, I'm just clicking on all the wrong buttons here. So sorry about that for those of you watching on YouTube. But I guess just to kind of to keep on talking about my point there, like Jamal Haynes and Malachi Hosley just have not had big games against FBS or Power 4 opponents. Like they just haven't had it. Like against Gardner Webb and against Temple. And look, I know Temple's an FBS opponent, but look, Malachi Hosley had 9 carries for 100 yards against Gardner Webb, 5 for 59 against Temple. Had huge games, but I mean Colorado 7 for 47. And I talked about Hosley after the Colorado game, like it was a pretty impressive game for only getting 7 carries. But then against Clemson, we talked about 3 for 13, didn't have a lot of attempts, and then against Wake 8 for 36. I know he's not getting like a huge volume or anything, but he didn't need him in those other games. He seemed to pop off pretty good. So I think the 2 main things that I want to see him. Okay, I'm gonna get to a third one here in just a second. The 2 of the main things like I want to see this offense improve upon is explosiveness in the passing game, and like I've got to see more from Jamal and Malachi in big games, like the rest of the way. Like you're not playing like I know this isn't a murderer's row of a schedule, but like they can't keep having some of these lackluster performances, whether it's against Virginia Tech or Duke or Syracuse, NC State, Boston College, Pitt, Georgia at the end of the season. Like Haynes King can't carry the ball 20 times every game. Like it's not going to work, and it's going to cost you at some point if you cannot get those guys going in a little bit of a better fashion. I don't know if you had any more thoughts on that, or when I accidentally clicked out, you talked about it, but
Yeah, I'm pretty much sharing the same sentiment. But I will push back a little, and I will say that for all of the quote unquote duds that Jamal Haynes has had, I don't think Malachi Hosley has had like a bad game per se. I mean, because you look at the stat, like his lowest yards per carry is 4.3 against Clemson, where he got 3 carries. It's just I really want to see Hosley get more involved
yeah,
if this is really the production you're going to get out of him. Um, I want to see him more. I mean, there's a reason why you got him. He was one of the best FCS running backs. Came to Georgia Tech to be the guy alongside Jamal Haynes, and I'm okay with a split backfield at this point. Jamal's just got to go out there and earn it, and he struggled, but he's still the same powerful, quick running back that he has been. He's just got to find a way to return to that role.
yeah, and don't take. I hope nobody's hearing this and just hearing me like talk down and say like, "Oh my God, Jamal and Malachi have just been awful. They've been terrible this year." It's just they've just got to do more. Like you've seen some explosive plays and you've seen some things going here and there at some point, but like and like the PFF grades are not terrible for them. I mean, Malachi Hosley has a 72.3 grade in 152 snaps. Jamal Haynes has a 67 grade in 193 snaps. Like it's not awful. But it's just in those big, like you really needed more out of them on Saturday. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
And
I
just
mean, because Jamal Haynes can go out and win a game for you. And the reason why you saw Georgia Tech in such a big deficit is because the offense wasn't moving at all in the first half. And when you were, um, you know, the drive would end suddenly, like the 2 turnovers on downs. You just couldn't really run the ball to the extent that you wanted to. And that's what a Georgia Tech 2025 team should be. So it's just getting back, returning to that identity. And I don't know how that happens, but it's got to happen at some point.
yeah. So I wrote about this the other day. Another thing that like I think really like some players that really are a position that like really needs to step up is the tight ends. We talked about it before the season. Like this was a group we were watching super closely just because like Georgia Tech fans know. I don't know that like the wide like everybody knows like just how important like Jackson Halls and some of those guys were to the offense. Like they really need these guys to block well and perform better. And if you look at the PFF grades on offense, like 4 of the 7 lowest graded players for Georgia Tech on offense are all the tight ends. Like neither of them have graded well. And again, I'll say my favorite line that PFF isn't the gospel here, but like I think it matches the eye test from when I've watched every game this year. Like I've watched every game like 3 or 4 times. Like it lines up. Like JT Byrne in 154 snaps has a 45.6 grade, 48.8 run blocking grade. That's not what we expected at the beginning of the year. Brett Scyther, 92 snaps, 48.9 grade. Josh Beetham, 105 snaps, 51.5 grade. Luke Harpering, 83 snaps, 57.3 grade. And look, I know Brett's coming off an ACL injury. Luke's still a young guy. Like I get that, even if these guys were playing all exceptional, like that doesn't solve every issue. But like I think they've got to find more out of this position. I'm honestly more talking about a pass blocking perspective, or not pass blocking, run blocking perspective. Like I know sometimes I get questions like, why don't we throw to tight ends more? Why doesn't Georgia Tech do this with their tight ends more or whatnot? Like, and I do get it, but I don't think honestly that's the main function of the offense. It's just we've been watching Buster Faulkner for for this is his third year now. They have to run block better. Would I welcome? Like I think Harpering especially could probably bring more in the passing game, but I think Georgia Tech has to get more out of these guys.
Yeah, and when you talk about a Georgia Tech offense, like it's not designed for tight ends to flourish and be, these super big receiving yards guys. That's not what the role that they're supposed to play. But Georgia Tech tight ends, at least in a Brent Key and a Buster offense, they do play a super important role, like we saw that last year. That's why Georgia Tech's offense was so successful because you were able to put Jackson Hawes in a ton of different positions, and he was able to go block for you. He was one of the most important pieces of that team last year. I mean, that's why you were able to run the ball so well. And we talk about Jamal Haynes struggling a little bit, and I think some of that you have to connect to the tight end play because it flat out has not been good in the receiving game, blocking. It's noticeable, kind of with whoever you put out there, that the tight end blocking is just not even close to the same level as it was last year. Now I know Jackson Hawes is an NFL guy. Caught his first NFL touchdown a couple of weeks ago.
When we were podcasting.
When we were podcasting, but I know you're not going to have a guy of that level every year, but there's got to be some continuity, and just the blocking has been, outright bad. Like there are some plays that get completely foiled just from tight end play, and I need to see one of the four guys step up.
Yeah, and like this isn't us calling anybody out or singling anybody out. It's just you look at the grades, you watch the film, you watch the games. It just kind of bears it out that they have to be better at that position. All right, let's quit being some negative Nancy's and let's talk about what we like about an offense that ranks fairly highly in a lot of categories. Look, Haynes King, again, I've talked about the passing game, especially downfield. I know a lot of it has been screens, a lot of it has been intermediate. Again, there's not much I can say about what Haynes King has done. Just like he's a warrior, he has willed this team. He's already rushed for 7 touchdowns already this year. Like I think he's tied for the lead in the ACC, if I'm not mistaken, in rushing touchdowns. Yeah, he has 7. It's 380 yards, 7 touchdowns, thrown for 758 yards, has a 68.5 completion percentage, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's been really good. I know there's been some streakiness at times. Like he did not start the Wake Forest game very well at all. I know the passing game struggled a little bit against Clemson at times. But I know you're going to get the best out of him each and every week. And then, I think the offensive line, for the most part, has been pretty good. Like Keelan Rutledge, I think he's been pretty good. 73.5 grade on PFF, 327 snaps. Ethan McKinney with a 71.1 grade. And 329 snaps with an 85.3 pass blocking grade, might I add. I think he's been kind of sneaky under the radar, been pretty good. Malachi Carney, I think, has been solid. 65.6 grade, 267 snaps. I don't think he's been spectacular or anything, but I think he's playing at or maybe a little bit above even the level that Jordan Williams was last year. I think where they've struggled this year is in the left guard and the center. Whether it's Tana, Harrison Moore, Joe Fusile, those guys, I think they've struggled a little bit. Just to put it Tana, 58.1 grade and 112 snaps. I think he's just been very up and down. Joe Fusile and 230 snaps with a 58.2 grade. Again, just very up and down. Harrison Moore, 334 snaps, 60.2 grade. Fairly well. And I think I think all that matches the eye test as well. Like I think Harrison Moore is still a young guy. This is his first full year as a starter. So like and Tana as well. Like I think that both of those guys, like this is the first time they played significant snaps. But I think otherwise, I think it's been mostly pretty good. And I expect those guys to get better as the season goes along. Like we talked about it at the beginning of the season with some of those new guys in there. Like I know Ethan McKinney played a pretty good bit in 2023. He didn't play as much last year. Like I think these guys are just going to continue to get better. Like last year when you had Weston and you had Jordan and you had Corey Robinson, guys that had just played a lot of football, and it was like, okay, like these guys are what they are, which was good. Like they had a very good offensive line. Probably not going to get a ton better. Like I think these guys, I still think we're tapping into a little bit of potential here.
Yeah, and I think especially with positions like center, I mean that's the most volatile position on the offensive line. Like if you make a ton of mistakes, you can dictate a whole game. And I think a part of development as a center, especially when you have a lot of young guys competing for snaps at center, the best way to develop a center is throw them out in the water and you know see if they can swim. And I think we've kind of seen that out of these guys. And honestly, week by week, the play has been better on that area of the O line, left guard, and center. And I think a lot of it is just going to come from, hey, these guys are really young, and the only way you can get them experience is by playing them. You can't add transfer portal guys in the middle of the season. And these guys, are very talented, and you've seen their play slowly evolve, but it's still, I mean, there's still a couple mistakes here and there that you would like to see erased. But I mean, this is the most you can do, throwing them into the water, and like I said, seeing if they can float.
Yep. So I don't think we can lead the offense without talking about a glaring issue as well. Like I promised I was done being negative, but I'm going to circle back to that actually. 101st in turnovers lost. That's just unacceptable. I don't have much more to add than it's just not good. Like they have to be better over the next 7 games at taking care of the ball. We'll see. Like you had a crucial fumble in the second half of that Wake Forest game, but look, it's been a problem since game 1. Like they turned it over a lot against Colorado early in the game, turned it over a couple times against Gardner Webb, a couple times against you had some key moments there against Temple as well. Just that has to improve. That absolutely has to improve over the next 7 games. I don't know if you have any more to add on that, but
And I know Tech fans feel all the same way. It kind of feels like it just came out of nowhere, and I think it could just be thinking about not turning it over causes you to turn it over. I mean, because last year Georgia Tech was a team that, again, didn't really fumble the ball, and we've seen uh, plenty of fumbles this year. You got to learn how to protect the ball. Um, I mean, it's so crucial because that Jamal Haynes fumble in the fourth quarter of the Wake Forest game could have easily lost you the game. If Wake Forest capitalized, and you're seeing it, you're 5-0, but there are points where you can see teams, they can attack if you fumble the ball multiple times in a game, and you got to clean that up.
yep. I mean, I'll be harsh and say the grade I would give the offense is a B minus through 5 games. And I know that, again, they're 18th in total offense. They're 16th in rushing offense. Like they're good. I think there's some things that they really have to clean up if they really want to turn into one of the nation's elite offenses, which I don't think is unreasonable. Like you have a veteran coordinator, you have veteran talent on this offense, and I don't think it's too harsh to expect a little bit more.
Yeah, and I would go around to B minus two just because I'm kind of uncertain of the level of talent of the teams that they played in Colorado and Clemson. I mean, especially Clemson. Like at that time, that felt like a very big win. They're coming off a close loss to LSU, and then Clemson goes out, has another stinker the week after, and you're starting to question: is this Clemson team really that good? So I need to see it done again against some more, I guess, better teams on the schedule, but. I would go around to B minus two. This is still a very, very good, talented
Yeah,
offense. It's just you can see signs of struggle and things that need to stop
yeah.
soon before you start playing big games.
Yep. I guess let's go over to the defense now, and like that's where it's kind of weird. Like when you look at the stats for the offense, like it's very impressive, and you think we would just be showering it with praise. And we kind of, I'll admit, we do nitpick a little bit on that, but it's like I think things that can get better. I think the opposite is true of the defense. Like you look at the stats, and like nothing blows you away. Like you're not just sitting here like Blake Gideon for the Broyles Award or anything like that. But I don't think the stats necessarily match up when you watch it, because there have been several times because of the turnover issues, and I think this needs to be pointed out, that the defense has been put into some very tough situations, and they've almost always come through. Like I don't remember a time where Georgia, and maybe I'm just blatantly forgetting something, like Georgia Tech's offense has put them in a tough position, and Georgia Tech's defense just fell through. I mean, we talked about it a lot against Colorado when you had the 3 turnovers, but they only scored that 1 touchdown, and that was because like it was on the very wrong end of the field for Georgia Tech. Gardner Webb did get a touchdown after fumble, but I mean, I think we all knew what was going to be the result of that game. And look, again, the stats aren't going to blow you away. 67th total defense, 50th passing yards allowed, 53rd scoring defense, 98th in sacks. Y'all know me. I'm definitely going to get on that in a second. 47th in tackles for loss, 54th in red zone defense, and 100th in rushing defense. So 2 things like that obviously stand out there is the sacks and the rushing defense. And I do want to kind of play devil's advocate a little bit, maybe in the way I didn't with the offense, and that looking at some of the rushing numbers that some teams have put on Georgia Tech, like I think the worst effort was clearly the Wake Forest game from like beginning to end. Like that was a bad game for the rushing defense. Damon Claiborne played pretty well. Robbie Ashford played pretty well. Like that was the only game where I was just very, very displeased with the run defense. I will say a couple of the other games, especially like the Temple game, like we talked about it after the Temple game, like they had nearly 100 yards rushing in garbage time in like that fourth quarter. Like it was kind of deceiving a little bit. Again, I'm not saying the run defense is great or anything, but I don't when I watch them, I don't view them, I don't look at them and go, man, Georgia Tech is just one of the worst defenses in the country. I think it can be a lot better, and I think it's going to have to be, because I do think teams are going to see that, and you're going to face some teams that want to run the ball. Like I can tell you just from watching every game of theirs, like Virginia Tech and Kyron Drones and them, hasn't been a great season for them, obviously, but they do run the ball. Hollywood Smothers for NC State, one of the best running backs in the ACC, they're going to run the ball. We all know Georgia runs the ball with the guys that they have. Like it's just going to have to be better. And I guess, again, playing devil's advocate for the sacks, I think it still has to be much better. I think you can break it down in 2 ways. Is one, the transfer defensive ends that they've taken have been pretty disappointing. I would think we would both agree on that. They're also playing a lot of young guys on there as well. Like Andre Fuller and Christian Garrett are 2 true freshmen that, like, let me just look at the PFF numbers real quick on here in terms of just snaps they played. Yeah, but look, Amontre Bradford's played 93 snaps. He has an 83.4 pass rushing grade. Like, I'd kind of like to see him play a little bit more. Christian Garrett's played 48 snaps. Look, I think that's a pretty good mark for somebody like that. Andre Fuller's played 137 snaps as a true freshman defensive end in the ACC. So I think on one hand, you can be pretty disappointed with the way the transfers have played. Braden Manley only has half a sack right now. Ronald Triplett's been a little bit banged up. Look, I know A.J. Hoffler was a little bit banged up to start the season. Right now, he does have a 43.9 grade in 111 snaps, including a 28.9 tackling grade and only a 50.7 pass rushing grade. Again, like when we talk about these things, like I don't want anybody to get like misconstrued, like we're taking shots at players or anything. Like it's just, we're just evaluating things how they are and what our eyes tell us and what the grades and stats tell us. It's been pretty disappointing on that front. Just kind of wrap up on the defensive line. I think the interior's been kind of what I thought it would be. It's not spectacular. Like you don't have a bunch of just NFL monsters on the inside, but I don't think it's been bad. Like, I mean, Jordan Vandenberg, 75.5 grade and 190 snaps, including an 80.8 in run defense. That's pretty good. And I'll say, like I said about Triplett being banged up, like he has graded out pretty well in 65 snaps, 70.9 grade. Jason Moore, sneakily solid, especially with a 74 pass rushing grade, which is second highest on the team in 64 pass rushing snaps. Like that's not bad. I think, him, Bradford, Christian Garrett, and I think Akilo Stone in his time, like they've been pretty solid with the interior pass rush. So I've been pleased with that. But again, I think the stats show there's also plenty of room for improvement.
And I think when you talk about pass rush this year, like the thing that's so big to me is with guys like Akilo Stone and Braden Manley, I've seen them get to the quarterback multiple times, but it's a matter of finishing those plays. And I feel like that's almost a conversation that we have every week. That's why those sack numbers are so low because even though guys may be under pressure, I mean, think Ashford last week, um, when they get under pressure, they can kind of sneak away, and it almost feels like it's like that every single play. Uh, just need to find a way to finish plays. Make sure contain these quarterbacks. You played a lot of dual threat quarterbacks. You're in an age where most teams are going to have a guy that can run the ball at least a little bit at the quarterback position, and you got to find a way to get them down. I think that's been their biggest, or at least that's been my biggest gripe with the pass rush in general. But the one thing, uh, there's a couple of things I want to talk about with the defense that need to improve. I think the defense has been pretty solid overall. I think the secondary um, has shown really good. Uh, they've shown really good glimpses this year. Two things that are huge for me that I want to see later into the season. Georgia, you have to play better defense on fourth down. Looking at the stats, teams convert on fourth down 83% of the time against Georgia Tech. That's 131st in the FBS, and we've noticed it. We both referenced it. Like it kind of feels like they're playing a step down under pressure. Uh, Again, when the game starts to get close, the defense does lock down a little bit, but it feels like sometimes, you're just laid back a little bit, letting the team come to you, and that's one big thing I need to see. And the other big thing, we talk about, giving the ball away on offense. You need to take the ball away on defense too. You're near bottom of the ACC in terms of takeaways, in terms of interceptions, and that's just something you need to see more. And I think getting more pressure on the quarterback, getting the quarterback down, not allowing him to scramble, you're going to find more interceptions that way. So I think it's a combination of secondary needs to work better when the play breaks down, getting takeaways, but I also think the defensive line needs to be better and finishing plays, getting to the quarterback. I think if they start to work hand in hand, again, this is a group. A lot of these guys are either new to the team, transfers, freshmen, um, that haven't played with each other yet, and they don't, their play styles don't exactly mesh. But I think once you start to see that, you're going to start to see more takeaways. But that's how you can kind of dispel a slow offensive start, and that hasn't exactly happened. But if that happens, that's I guess kind of the key to success for the Georgia Tech defense.
Yeah, and I would, just kind of go into the other positions. Like I actually think the linebacker group has been like solid again,
Yeah.
not spectacular, but I mean Melvin Jordan 74.1 grade and 116 snaps. That's not bad at all. EJ Lightsey has an 85.4 tackling grade and 222 snaps. Like that's kind of hard to do. Like that's a really good like tackling grade. Tajay Butler 65.7 grade, 121 snaps. Look, again, nothing. Kyle Eford, 65.3, 206 snaps, like just kind of a little bit above average across the board. I think, again, the lack of turnovers created, the lack of, sacks, I do think they're okay at getting like pressure. I just think they're, I asked Brent Key a couple weeks ago about the trust in the defensive line in general, and he made sure to point out how many young guys are playing, and like our pressure rate's like not that bad. We just got to like get guys on the ground, and I do think that there's truth to that. Um, I think it's been solid for Blake Gideon. I don't like, again, when I watch the defense, I don't look at them and say they're poorly coached or they're just out of position a lot of times. I think they're put into some tough positions sometimes, especially against, early in that game against Colorado, a couple times last week. I think there's plenty of room for them to improve, but like I think this has been like a solid unit all around.
Yeah, and that's what I would say too. I know sometimes, I talk negatively about this or things that need to change, and that just comes from a position of, hey, we're 5-0, and there are some things that need to be better. But the defense has played good enough to get us to this point. So again, the small nitpicks that I have, I'm happy that it's just that and it's not, hey, we're getting the ball absolutely ran over us every game. We can't stop offenses because that's not been the case. It's just been at times we're seeing a couple of things and that's it. Very happy to be with the 5.0 team that has a solid offense and a solid defense. It could be a lot worse, especially for some other ACC teams.
I got to start borrowing that phrase, a 5.0 team. There we go.
5-0 team.
But yeah, they're coming off, the defense is coming off their worst performance of the year, like kind of by far. Like I thought that was their worst. So I know it's kind of like I'm saying all this and like they haven't been that bad. There's some underlying stuff here that's not that bad, and they didn't look very good Saturday, except they did play a little bit better in the second half. But I think overall, I think just to cap our discussion, and like I wanted to be as like honest as possible, because I think the easiest thing we could have done here was, hey, Tech's 5-0 and talked about our thoughts for 5 minutes. They're 5-0 and they look really good. Haynes King is awesome. We're not going to go any further than that. Just be happy they're 5-0. Like we want to talk about like all the positions and kind of like where we think they can improve, and like kind of like we want to provide nuance to this. And I think where I stand after the first 5 games is it hasn't been perfect by any stretch, but I do think that there is some room to improve. But they need to start getting going, because I will say at some point, the phrase is used a lot, like you are what you are at some point. And I think you don't want to be the team that is just skating by against very average to below average ACC opponents, and where you're a very flawed team and you're turning it over a lot. You're losing turnover battles. Like, how did Georgia Tech win that game doing that? Or how did they do that? Like, again, it's fun to win. You'll take wins any way you can get them. But at some point, you need to start putting together more complete games. And look, I understand. I don't expect Georgia Tech to go out there and just blow the doors the rest of the way. From Virginia Tech to Pittsburgh, I don't expect Georgia Tech to win every game by like 30 points or something, even though I know it's a favorable schedule. But like I do want to start to see them put together some more consistent effort and like start a game strong, end the game strong. You're going to have some hiccups in between. Like even the best Brink Key games of this era, like there's going to be some hiccups in between. But even like when the Temple win, like you win by a lot, but it's like, I could write a book about that second quarter and like just how dysfunctional it was. Like the first half of the Wake Forest game was incredibly dysfunctional. Just starting to see more complete halves. And I think that's just going to kind of lead us into our next discussion and just kind of where we're going to wrap things up today. And we're not going to go super deep on this, because I love college football to death, and I don't like talking about the playoff all the time. But I do think it's necessary a little bit, just because I do think there is a very clear path. I mean, Georgia Tech is number 17 in the country. Like you go, if you are the type of person to do this kind of stuff, go look at the odds. And Georgia Tech is second in the sports books to win the ACC right now, behind Miami. Like they are very, and if you are a contender in the ACC or to win one of these conferences, you are there. You are a college football playoff contender. I'm not saying they're a national championship contender, but Georgia Tech is very much in the conversation to be in the college football playoff. And I kind of want to just talk about that a little bit and the ACC. And I guess, we kind of do this a little bit every time we can, just kind of, okay, like let's take a step back and let's like look at the schedule as it is going forward, because I think obviously things change. As you get a little bit more data. Like we looked at this as a favorable schedule before the season, and I still think it's a favorable schedule. And I think it's gotten even more favorable, honestly. Like, look, Georgia Tech is a team I think that can beat anybody on their schedule. I think they can also lose to any team they play the rest of the way. Like if they lost to Virginia Tech next week, even though everything under the sun has gone wrong for Virginia Tech this year, I don't know if I'd be completely shocked. If they beat Georgia at the end of the season to cap a 12-0 regular season, it's in the realm of outcomes here. Like this team is kind of high variance that way. Starting with Virginia Tech next week, look, they've started off 0-3, and they have won 2 in a row. I was shocked when they beat NC State last week, to be honest. Like that was not on my radar. They faced Wake Forest this weekend. I'm kind of interested to see that game, and they're a touchdown favorite. Like that. I don't know. That's interesting. But again, Virginia Tech hasn't been spectacular this year. They have played a little bit better since firing Brent Pry. Duke is the team I'm very interested in. We talked about them before the season as being one of the hardest games on Georgia Tech's schedule. They took an early loss to Illinois. It was, I think, 45-19. Like, I've watched that game a couple times, and I don't think it was quite that bad. Look, Duke had a lot of yards in that game. They could not finish drives, and they turned the ball over a lot. I'm not saying they played super well, but I don't think the score was quite as bad as it looked. Um, then they lost to Tulane. They got down really early in that game, tried to make a comeback, didn't work. They've won 2 games in a row, and their offense has looked really good. Like, they absolutely destroyed Syracuse this past weekend, and they beat NC State the week before. I think Syracuse is not the same team without Steve Angeli. I think that I think they're just a shell of themselves right now, and it's going to be kind of tough for them the rest of the way. And I think, obviously, I just told you NC State lost to Virginia Tech. I think there's a lot of issues going on there. I think the way Duke plays could cause Georgia Tech some problems, especially with their offense. Like, Darian Mintz is a pretty good quarterback. Their passing attack has been very good, but also in a weird twist, Duke's defense has not been very good this year. That game just fascinates me in a lot of ways, and I think it's going to be like it's going to be a test for Georgia Tech. And look, Duke, we're kind of talking about the ACC here. Like, Duke's undefeated in ACC play. And they go to Cal this weekend in a game I would suggest all Georgia Tech fans kind of at least keep an eye on. They do face Syracuse at home after that. Again, that game was starting to really worry me with just, again, their offense gave Georgia Tech fits last year, and Steve Angeli and those receivers were kind of cooking. Again, Georgia Tech can lose to anybody on their schedule, but I do think they're much better than Syracuse, and it's not on the road. They do go to NC State. I talked about that game kind of all off season. I know I got some pushback from some of you guys about being worried about NC State. For what it's worth, they did beat Virginia, who looks kind of okay right now, but they lost to Virginia Tech. That's not great. And I don't know. But it's on the road in Raleigh. You can't take anything for granted. Their offense, again, I think can give Georgia Tech problems. Like, CJ Bailey's pretty solid. Hollywood Smothers is a really good running back. Their defense has just been, again, it's been bad for the past couple of years, and it's continued that way this year. Have a bye week. Boston College is 1-3. Again, it's a road trip. Dylan Lonergan, I think, has looked pretty good, but the rest of their team, it's been like they lost to Stanford on the road. They lost last weekend. You took a loss to Michigan State in overtime. I think they're capable of beating Georgia Tech, but again, it's not. They haven't been great or anything. And then Pitt is 2-2. It looked like they might have been in position to pull an upset on Louisville this past weekend, but they kind of let a first half lead slip away on them. They lost to West Virginia as well earlier this year, and West Virginia is one of the worst teams in the Big 12. So as far as ACC schedule goes, again, there's not a team that Georgia Tech is not better than. I think they're better than every ACC team that they play the rest of the way. It's just a matter of putting it all together and playing that way.
Yeah, and I think I do want to note ESPN FPI, which whatever you want to say about that statistic, it does actually have Duke as the favorite, 60.5% chance of winning against Georgia Tech, which I thought was interesting when just going through the schedule. But just going down the line, I think you face a lot of, I don't want to say lower level ACC teams, but I mean teams that are clearly a step below the Miamis and the Florida States and, the Georgia Techs of the world. I think you can say that, they're pretty noticeably not at that level. But I think you face a lot of teams that are, I think you face a lot of teams at the wrong time, I guess is what I'm saying. Like with Virginia Tech, obviously Philip Montgomery there now. They've kind of been playing a really motivated brand of football when at the beginning of the year, that team looked absolutely dead. You're playing them at a good time in the season for them. I think they're going to want to go out. I think they're going to go out. They're going to want to go out and make a statement. And I think Duke is going to want to do the same thing. Obviously, had a couple of missteps early in the season. The game against Tulane, the Mensa revenge game didn't go to plan. But like you said, that is a team that is still undefeated in the ACC. That is a team that is still equally as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than any other team on the schedule, especially for the fact that that is a road game. I think that's by far the scariest game on the rest of the schedule. And, talk about Syracuse, NC State, Boston College, Pitt. I just think you play all of these teams, and now you are the team that is looking to be, knocked off the top of the mountain. Like last season, Georgia Tech was one of those teams at the back end of the schedule, looking to knock off Miami and looking to knock off all these other teams. You kind of felt like the little guy at the bottom, um, you know, slaying Goliath, for lack of a better term. Now you are Goliath, and now you need to um, find out how to win these games where, like I said, Virginia Tech's playing motivated ball. Duke wants nothing more than to dominate Georgia Tech and say, hey, we're actually a legit team. Um, all of these teams want to prove not only to the ACC, but to, the AP poll and college football fans in general that, hey, we're legit. So you got to play with the expectation of you're a top team in the ACC, you're undefeated, you're top 20 team in the AP poll. Now you just got to act like you got to go handle business. Um, I want to see some dominant wins. I'm hoping Virginia Tech can be that. But you gotta play like you're a top 20 team in the country.
Yep. There's a very clear path to the getting to the ACC championship game. I mean, it's pretty crystal clear. They have to go take advantage of it, and they have to play better than they did last Saturday. I'll give them the same grade I gave the offense earlier. Like, I think the team as a whole has been a B- so far. There's been flashes of really good football in there. There's some things I like that they've done. There's also a ton to clean up. And look, I don't think Brent Key would disagree with me, honestly. Like, I mean, heck, he might even be harsher than I was. And it's like, I hope nobody takes this as like I have a negative tone about a podcast about a 5-0 team. It's just just giving my honest thoughts about it and where things are at right now and kind of moving forward. And we'll see how they finish things out. But that's going to do it for this episode today. We talked about plenty of topics that, look, we want to hear what you guys think. Like, this is y'all are the ones cheering for the team. Like, we want to hear what you guys think and kind of what can be improved, what you like about the team so far. And when you do that, you should also subscribe to the channel if you hadn't already. Like the video, follow us wherever you get your podcast, where you can also tell us what you think about the start so far. We will be back, of course. Like I said, we're going to try to do something every Monday where we kind of quote unquote ACC power ranking type episodes where we kind of give a little bit of a broader look to the ACC. Maybe not so much Georgia Tech focus. Like, obviously we're going to talk mostly about Georgia Tech, but it's, kind of the ACC landscape. We'll be previewing Virginia Tech. Should have a fun guest lined up for that one. And like I said, we'll be back here next week to continue things as normal. Appreciate you guys as always, and we will catch you next time.